Welcome to our Week 6 Sentinel recap. I'm Perry Mattern alongside Jake Adams as we talk about another good week of high school football. And last week I had the shirt, and now this week Jake clearly has it. Jake going 5-6 in the games. I went 9-2, Jake.
Yeah, a little bit of a turnaround there.
Just a little bit of a turnaround. We'll talk about our picks and why we made those picks as we go through these games. Let's start with our quick snaps. First off, in James Buchanan, East Pennsboro, pretty much a cakewalk for them, 46-0.
Yeah.
We both had East Penn.
Yeah, we're not surprised there. I mean, James Buchanan's been struggling all year. They came into the game, 2-3. East Pennsboro's obviously right now the class of that division, especially with Greencastle losing last night too. But again, what else can we say about this team? They've got the running attack that's been working so well for them, and they used it again last night.
Got to be very happy with the way that they handled their business right from the start of that game. In Cedar Cliff and Mechanicsburg, this game a little closer than the score indicates, 42-14, the Colts win. This game was close for a while, even into the third quarter, and then finally the Colts woke up.
Yeah, and Jaden Demi, first receiving touchdown of the year. It seems kind of surprising, but now it's his first of the 20 that he's got. Another 4 last night. 131 yards on the ground, 31 receiving, I believe. The offense doesn't seem to have to really try much. Tyler Schubert really helped him out throwing 4 picks.
Right, and as long as Demi keeps getting the ball and keeps scoring, why go away from it? We both had Cedar Cliff in that game as well. Boiling Springs at Palmyra, this was a game that we both got wrong. We both had the Bubblers, and the Bubblers playing well, going to Palmyra. If you put the transitive property together, Boiling Springs had beaten Trinity, blown them out, and Trinity had beaten Palmyra, but the Cougars on their home turf played a good game.
It kind of just goes to show that division has to be one of the most up for grabs divisions out there right now, and not because anyone, like the top half is really doing great, like the Keystone's wide open because of how top heavy it is. But the Capital is just, you don't really know what's going to happen. And Boiling Springs, we picked them because they were coming off a 3-game winning streak, and it wasn't there for them that night.
Yeah, just weren't able to really get it together there in the second half. They outgained the Cougars by a good bit, but Palmyra 13-7 advantage there in the second half of that 29-21 victory. West Perry at Trinity, we both had the Shamrocks, and we were correct, 42-18. They beat West Perry, and West Perry, we were thinking about them as the season has gone on, that maybe the schedule was very tough. And it was, undoubtedly, at the start of the year, but they still have not been able to get on track in capital play.
And you got to wonder if some of that's just confidence at this point. They've gotten so beat up early that it just kind of zapped what they may have had. And Trinity, obviously, is fighting to stay afloat, really. It's sitting right around 500 every week. It seems like they win one, lose one. And this one had the makings, we thought, of here's Trinity. They got... It seems like every other week they have a really tough game followed by, I should say easy, West Perry's not easy, but an easier contest, and here it was again.
And as you mentioned, that Capital wide open, so you never know where the Shamrocks may be able to go. Big Spring at Northern, we split on this one. You had the Bulldogs, I had Northern, and Northern pretty handily, 28-7 over Big Spring. And for the Bulldogs, you hate to say that this is a scheduled swoon now, but they're doing the exact same thing they did last year, a strong start. This year starting 2-0 and now have lost 4 in a row. Yeah,
the only difference really between last year and this year is that they got the win in the game against Boiling Springs because of the forfeit. But like you said, it's basically the same thing again. I thought Big Spring might be able to right the ship. I didn't know if Northern really had enough in it to slow down Big Spring, but turns out they had more than enough. That running game for the Bulldogs didn't get going at all.
Northern will be right there near the top of that division. Unfortunately, it appears that East Pennsboro is running away with it. Those two teams, though, have not played as of yet. Shippensburg at Waynesboro. This was the only other game that we both guessed incorrectly. We had Waynesboro. They were playing well, showing good offense. But, man, did this Shippensburg defense show up?
Yeah. Waynesboro's offense, I think Connor Federoff he can throw.
And the rain certainly had to have something to do with it.
Yeah, if it was anything like it was over here, it had to be pretty bad. But so maybe that was some of it, but obviously holding them to that few points.
Just 12.
And then the defense being able to second straight week score 3 touchdowns. The offense, that's a good sign for them because they had trouble with Emmett Geiger at running back for a while. Zion Ware seems to be kind of picking things up a little bit.
This is very interesting. They might have themselves a brand new weapon. He was over 100 last week, goes for 92 and a TD this week. Susquehanna at Newport, And the Blackhawks really were never in this one with the Buffaloes.
They didn't get their final score, their only score, until the fourth quarter, basically in garbage time. They started, it seemed like, when I was going through the box scores, just a whole new offense, basically. You saw new faces left and right, wide receiver, quarterback, running back. Shane Smith, I think, had a couple carries again, but that was about it. It's you got to wonder if there's anything left with them. You got to hate seeing them lose the way they have been every week. It would be nice for them to pull off an upset.
You do have to believe, though, that there is a chance that they're going to get a win or two in that Tri-Valley Conference.
Newport was definitely a tougher one for them.
No doubt about it. 3 key games that we decided on, the 3 best games, I think we could say, on Friday night. And let's start at Steel High, where Camp Hill has now lost 2 in a row after getting into conference play. And another close loss to a pretty good Steel High team.
Yeah, we weren't surprised at all that Milton Hershey won last week. But this one, I think, yes, Steel High's good, but I think this is a little bit more of a shocker. They came in 1-4, outside of the Class 3A playoff bracket right now, the 4-team race. Camp Hill was easily the class of that bracket. So this one, I think, has to sting a little bit more for them. The offense is struggling a little bit. Bill Williams had some nice yards on the ground, but Schuster, the quarterback, has thrown another 2 picks, which is 3 in the past 2 weeks. He had 1 going into the Milton Hershey game. His yards per attempt have plummeted from, I think, about 10 to now 5. Obviously, we expected that once they got to this division like that, it was going to get tougher for them. But, I mean, now this kind of shows you maybe this isn't, that single A is a little bit more up for grabs than we thought.
Really thought that the Lions were going to take a hold of that and run with it.
Yeah.
And maybe not win this division, but be right there in the conversation. And they still can be. And Milton Hershey and Steel High may be the class of that one. Now, you said it was a shocker. Maybe it wasn't so shocking because I had the Rollers in that game and you had the Camp Hill Lions.
I want to see what they do at home, though. They finally get a chance to be at home this week.
In the new stadium.
Yeah, it's only going to be 1 and 2 they get this year. They're only going to be home 4 times this season. But I wonder if maybe just being on the road this much has kind of taken a little bit out of them. They haven't gotten a chance to really play in front of their true home fans.
And both of these games were games that they certainly felt like they had.
Yeah.
That they could have won or should have won as well. You were at Hershey Park Stadium for Redland Lower Dauphin. Lower Dauphin out to a 17-0 lead. Redland almost made another comeback. And now you're getting into the area, if you've read Jake's story, and I read your story, that you're getting into the area where Chad Weaver's starting to worry about his team not being ready to play because they can count on the fact that they can just come back.
I talked with Phil Overton right after, and I asked him, what's going on with this team and why are you guys such a second-half program? And he just said, 2 things kind of stuck out to me. One, he felt like Lower Dauphin wanted that game more and just played a better game. If you watched it, Lower Dauphin, the second half they slowed down, but it's not surprising because the first half they averaged 11 yards a carry. I mean, that was unsustainable against Redland because even if Redland's getting burned, they're not that bad of a defense. The second thing he said was that they just didn't seem to come alive until the second half, and that's kind of starting to become their MO, and they got to watch because they got Big Spring this week, but after that it gets really, really tough.
Right, it does, and you can't be digging yourself holes that big.
Yeah.
And now the Keystone continues to get crazier and crazier because now you have a bunch of teams with 1 loss.
Yeah.
And then also, now Cedar Cliff has 1 loss overall, but undefeated in the division, and McDevitt undefeated overall. Cumberland Valley and Carlisle was our game of the week, and Carlisle played a good game. They really did. They lose 28-14, and the game was closer than that. Tim Spinelli was outstanding. 3 touchdowns on the offensive side and a pick 6 that turned the game, and as the rains came, Carlisle, the passing game, just suffered.
Yeah, for me, we don't get to see the defensive stats as easily as offense. The offensive numbers we can sit right here, and here they are, passing, rushing, receiving yards. For defense, it's harder to tell unless you're at the game who stands out. And Spinelli makes his name as a linebacker. He's a running back almost by default in that program. And last night, reading your story, it was just, okay, this is what he can do. This is how he can affect it, even though you can't really see those numbers.
Cumberland Valley, I think the big start for them getting out to a 14-0 lead was big because they're not the type of offense that can play from behind. But now let's take a look at Carlisle. This is a game that has not really been a game for years. They outgained Carlisle by about 110 yards. If Berger doesn't throw that interception, they're down 7 at that point, hopefully driving, had the momentum. You have to feel good. Now, Josh Oswalt, after that game last night, not pleased, said his team kind of gift-wrapped some opportunities to Cumberland Valley, but I think if he sits back and looks at this one, probably watched the film today, I think he has to be pretty happy. The defense played an outstanding game for him, and then also, you don't like moral victories, but they gave Cumberland Valley all they could handle.
Yeah, and obviously for a program that's suffered as much as it has in the past 27 years against CV, this is a better story than they've had. Not quite Cinderella story, but it's close. The question we had, especially I had going into this game, is look what they did against State College, having barely 100 yards on offense. What could they do against a better defense? They got 500 on Redland, but Redland's defense, as good as they are, is not at the same level as the Commonwealth.
Right.
And so I was interested to see, and you could probably testify to this a little bit, just what they can do against one of these tougher defenses. I mean, how did they look?
Well, I mean, Berger and Ramsey are quite the connection. And they almost had 300 yards of offense. Considering the conditions, I think you have to consider that a win.
Yeah.
And Green didn't run too bad, but the one thing that surprised both of us when you looked at the box score and I was at the game is that Deshaun Millington touched the ball one time on offense. And that's, I think everyone on that coaching staff would admit that that's wrong. I mean, he is a guy that can make plays happen, but it just didn't happen last night. But I think they have to be happy knowing that if they could play that game again right now, they would have a chance to win the ball game.
Put them on neutral field in better weather, and who knows what happens. You play this game 20 times, who knows what happens either.
Exactly. So let's get to our 3 Sentinel Stars of the week. In our preview video, we forgot to make our calls as to our guesses, but this was actually a tough choice. A lot of good performances, and a lot of good performances in a loss, but we're going to keep the performances to a win. And let's just start with the obvious. We just talked about him. Tim Spinelli, 3 rushing touchdowns, a 27-yard interception return for the touchdown, really clinched the game for the Eagles, and he was a force early in this game as well. And CV, when they have one guy to count on to give the ball, it's him.
It's kind of funny because most weeks we've kind of had at least one running back has just blown the other team out of the water. Jaden Demi the past few weeks averaging the absurd numbers that he was. But here's Spinelli, who's a 4-yard back and cloud of dust.
Right.
And yet but it's that defense that I think, like I was talking about earlier, that gives him this, because look at what he can do at linebacker.
Right, Josh Oswalt said he is that defense, which is pretty high praise. Zion Ware, we throw him in there. Shippensburg gets a big win. He gets 92 yards on the ground, a touchdown, and we touched briefly on it. Emmett Geiger not in the stat sheet the last 2 weeks, and now Ware suddenly becomes the feature back, and he's been very effective.
Yeah, he's not putting up Demi-like numbers or Overton-like numbers, but he's been much more effective, which at the minimum is what the Shippensburg offense needs, because they couldn't get anything going early on against Waynesboro. This week they were able to get something going, but earlier games against East Pennsboro, Mechanicsburg, and Chambersburg even, they only managed, I think, 100 yards when I got to see them. So just to get something out of that position, out of any position, really is a big boost for them. It shows because now it's 2 weeks in a row they've gotten 18 points.
Right, no doubt about it. And Ware, I think, gives them a little bit of an explosive capability to the offense that they didn't have, rather. John Miller, 14 carries for 142 yards. If you're good at math, that's over 10 yards per carry. A touchdown as Trinity rolled over West Perry. And Miller has been just kind of going about his business, but when you look at the stats, you're like, wow, the kid's having a pretty good year.
Yeah, it kind of gets buried on the fact that this Trinity program, I think if they had a better record, we'd be talking about him a little bit more, just because he's a steady as he goes kind of runner. He's got 80 to 140 yards basically every game. I think only once or twice he's been below 50. This game, his numbers might have been up higher if it weren't for the fact that that game got out of hand so quickly. But it's a good thing to see that they got Hunter Geisel there at quarterback, but I think John Miller might actually be the MVP of that offense.
Right, Zach Slonak there as well on the outside, but Miller is, I think, as you just said, the engine that makes them go.
Yeah.
That does it for our Sentinel Week 6 recap. We'll be back with the Week 7 preview. Can you believe it's Week 7 already?
I was wondering that today too.
And we'll talk about our picks, talk about the games. That video will be coming up on Thursday night, so look for that. And this week we'll be preparing our football tab, and we hope to see you on Thursday.